Welcome to Draft Utopia. Chris Ransom, Joseph Potter here. Today we've got a very special show for you guys. It'll be a quicker show than usual, though. I'm going to break down the first round of my 2024 MLS Mock Draft. I might break down the second. I do have half of the second round done. I have the first half of round two done. But it's dependent on time, basically, because we have 15 NFL games to get to. We have an MLS mock we're going to go over, and we want to be done with the show by 1 p.m. at the latest with the Vikings-Bengals NFL game set to start then. So I will knock out as many picks from now until 11:30. And we're also live on Anchor. This is the first Spotify show I've done in a while since the MLB draft in July. So we're live on Restream, TalkShoe, and Spotify, Joey. So a lot to go over. And we're going to start with the number one pick, Toronto FC. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about what they're going to do for a few months. And we thought this pick was either going to be West Virginia's Marcus Calderia or Clemson center back Pape Marboy. It turns out there was one other player they were looking at, Kamani Stewart-Baines, the freshman left winger on the Maryland Terrapins. 3 goals, 7 assists, has the kicking power, the kicking accuracy, only played 850 minutes, but the speed, kicking power, kicking accuracy, passing, and stamina, if you want from an MLS winger, is there. Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Only 18, turns 19 in January, would not require international roster slot, and could go to the MLS right out of the gate as a 19-year-old, checking off every box. But that is the player Toronto's reportedly interested in picking. I think they should take Pape Marboy, honestly, but at the same time, it's like you can't really fault them if this is the conclusion they came to and this is the thought process they came to. You can't really fault them too much, Joey, because it's like this is, while it's somewhat surprising, I figured they'd wait to make like I figured they'd wait until like Tuesday to stir the MLS draft rumors after the title game where Clemson played Notre Dame. I figured they'd do that. But instead, what ends up happening is they end up stirring the pot on Sunday during the Bills-Chiefs game, and I was kind of surprised, kind of taken aback, kind of thrown off guard a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. Because that's just how this draft cycle has been.
You were sending me some data on this, and it's like, damn, that's a lot to take in. It's even just the amount of people for the draft is insane. The top guys, there are so many people. The top guys, it's very easy for somebody to slip in there. So the top guys, by the time this happens, may not be the top guys taken.
And the crazy thing about this draft is there was a record low 3 Generation Adidas contracts. We found out from Kelkin Sport. My theory to Bob, because Bob told me there were only 3 Generation Adidas offers. I was like, what? That can't be true. But then I found out they were only the freshmen. So I told Bob, maybe it's possible that the MLS is only going to give out Generation Adidas offers to freshmen now that they're letting sophomores and juniors enter the MLS Super Draft. Maybe freshmen are the only players that are going to get Generation D, and that turned out to be correct, as Kelkin Sport, another Twitter user that watches college soccer for a living, confirmed that. So only 3 freshmen in this draft got Generation Adidas offers, but there's a ton of underclassmen, Joey. Let me put it this way. Only 6 seniors cracked the first round of my mock draft. Only 3 more seniors made the second round. So 47 of the first 58 picks were either junior red shirts, juniors, sophomores, sophomore red shirts, or freshman red shirts. And that has never happened in MLS history. Like, that happens in the NFL and NBA draft. That does not happen in the MLS. So to see an outlier of that magnitude this year, it really makes you wonder how this draft is going to end up playing out. because I want to touch on that briefly before I get to Colorado at 2, because I think it's pretty clear what Colorado's going to do at number 2, but it's like the outlier there, Joey, is pretty big. It's a pretty big outlier because you weren't expecting that type of outlier from in this draft. Like, I was not expecting that many underclassmen to go. I was thinking maybe 19 to 25 underclassmen go in round 1, and then we see some more seniors in round 2. But it's like, no. 47 of the top 58 players currently in the first 2 rounds of my mock draft are underclassmen, which is insane. You know, man, that's just unheard of for soccer to have that many underclassmen in a draft class. I thought 2022 was going to be a deep class. Then I saw the amount of underclassmen in last year's draft, and I thought, okay, 2023 might be deeper. And now, because of the new underclassmen rules, MLS has found a way to improve their draft class for the 3rd year in a row. And I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to play out, Joey. But do you have any thoughts on that before I get to number 2?
No, it just seems really, like you said, it's strange for an MLS draft. Usually it's really cut dry. This year it's not.
Okay, number 2, Colorado, Pape Marboy. There were some trade rumors about Montreal trying to move up to. They only offered 1,000 in allocation money in the 10th pick, and Colorado was like 50,000 and 100,000 in allocation money for the pick straight up. And then Colorado traded their left back to Chicago and got 550,000. So Montreal was ready to raise the offer, and then Colorado's like, no, we want 400K in the 10th pick, more than what Charlotte gave up for the number 1 pick, or 600K in allocation money. And it's like, Montreal's probably not going to move up to 2 now, because Colorado Rapids, the team Stan Kroenke owns, is saying, look, Montreal, if you want to move up to 2, you want Marcus Calderia or Pape Marboy, you are going to be paying out the ass to get the number 2 pick. And you know that pick is valuable when Stan Kroenke is making you pay out the ass to get it. I mean, the Rams had to pay out the ass to win a Super Bowl with their draft picks. So now, instead of being on the giving end of the draft, now it looks like Colorado's going to stay pat unless they get something on the receiving end, like a killer package. I think they're going to take Pape Marboy, the Clemson center back, because you already have a lot of good center back depth, and you drafted Moisey Bombito out of New Hampshire. But if you pair him with Pape Marboy, you're looking at a very good 1-2 punch at center back, probably the best center back starting lineup, as well as the best depth at center back in the entire MLS. And kind of depth would make the Colorado Rapids a force in the Western Conference if Pape Marboy develops as well as Bombito. He already looks better than Bombito just from watching him at Clemson. And I mean, he had 2 goals, 0 assists, 4 points, helped Clemson get 9 of their 10 shutouts when playing, 9 interceptions, 6 tackles, 1 foul, no yellow or red cards against Syracuse. Only gave up 1 goal in the final minute of the tournament. That was on a penalty kick, so that wasn't Pape Marboy's fault. Notre Dame got a penalty kick in the final minute of the tournament, but that was the only goal Clemson surrendered the entire tournament. I think Pape Marboy is the best player in this draft. I would take him at 1, but from what reports I've heard and from the speculation, I think Toronto's taking Kimani Smith-Baines. So that means Pape Marboy and Marcus Calderia, the 2 guys who've been 1 and 2 in my first 2 MLS mock drafts, are both going to be there at number 2, which probably explains why Colorado can do that. They have 4 first-round picks. They have 2, 4, 12, and 21. So if there's 2 star players like this who played each other in the College Cup, they can charge whatever they want, or they're going to stay put and take their guy at number 2. Because when you have number 2 and number 4, you can get best player and get a really good striker in what's a really deep forward class. I mean, a few months ago, I was telling you, Joey, we could see 15 forwards in round 1, 10 more in round 2. That's how deep this class is. And it seems like the last 2 or 3 drafts have been really deep at striker in rounds 1 through 3. So it's like, Pape Marboy is the most logistical pick. I mean, I like him more than Andrew Farrell, who went number 1 in 2013, Walker Zimmerman, the center back that from the MLS draft that made Team USA, Joshua Yarrow, second pick in 2016, who played 3 years at Georgetown, and Miles Robinson, the Syracuse center back. And you called him the Ray Lewis of soccer players. So I don't think Colorado moves out of 2. It's just going to take a hell of an offer, the kind of offer that will sweep Stanke on his feet. Just offer that would blow away this Rapids organization to move up to 2. And honestly, I don't see them trading this pick. They've got 3 international under 22 slots. Their 8 international slots are occupied, but the 3 under 22 slots are available. So if they want to draft an international player under the age of 22, they can. And Pape Marboy, I thought he was 20. He's 19. He turns 20 after the Super Draft. We found his birth certificate. Clemson website said he was 20, but we found a birth date for Pape Marboy from Senegal. He's 19. He doesn't turn 20 until after the Super Draft on December 30th, a day before Joey's birthday on New Year's Eve. So, with that being said, I don't think you trade this pick if you're Colorado. I think you take Pape Marboy and you get a second really good center back because you need help everywhere. You need that second good center back. You need a midfielder that can get you 10 assists. You need a striker that can get you 10 goals a year. And you need a good goalie with your starting goalie turning 34 and Colorado not wanting to renew him. Colorado needs help everywhere. So I think you have to take Pape Marboy unless you get an offer you cannot refuse. So, I mean, that's got to be the pick. Miami, they could trade this pick to Montreal if Montreal's desperate enough to move up for Marcus Calderia. But if Miami stays put, I think they go with Josh Jones at 3. I mean, Miami's only need really is getting more center backs, getting more bodies. They have quality starters at 9 other positions. Also, Inter Miami CF opens up next season on BetMGM as 5-1 odds to win the 2024 MLS Cup with Luis Suarez at striker and Lionel Messi at attacking midfielder. Yeah. The Columbus has 15-1 odds. They're the 3rd highest. They have the 3rd best odds, even though they return all 11 starters from their MLS Cup team. But we'll get to Columbus later. Inter Miami CF, I gave them Josh Jones. He's 6'5", 209 pounds. I mean, this is a player who's been consistent. He was one of 5 nominees for Gatorade Player of the Year prior to enrolling at Louisville. Was also 1 out of 32 high school players to get invited to the Generation Adidas Invitational at Real Madrid back in 2019. The former North Penn High School center back was a 2-sport athlete, played soccer and basketball. He actually averaged 21.6 points per game and 7.6 rebounds per game in basketball, despite choosing soccer over basketball as his main sport upon arriving at Louisville. And he played 20 minutes as a freshman. He was also the National Premier Soccer Player of the Year with the Philadelphia Ukrainian Nationals in the spring of 2022, prior to the summer of 2022. And he was the team captain at both North Penn High School and the Philadelphia Ukrainian Nationals prior to winning the National Premier Soccer League Player of the Year award in 2022. Started all 18 games his second season, improved his minute total from 14-20 to 16-27, playing 207 more minutes. Then he gets promoted to team captain this year, 1,514 minutes. And Jones looked like a man among boys in the 110 minutes of play against the Pittsburgh Panthers, Joey. I mean, this guy, a Pittsburgh player got injured during the game. He helped the player get back up. It says a lot about his character. But this guy looked like a stonewall defender, taking pressure off the goalie. I know some people refer to offensive tackles as stone walls because of how much pressure they take off the quarterback. I think Jones and Marboy are both stonewall defenders in that respect that take pressure off of the goalie. And he's born in the United States, so you can draft him and stash him in your team if you can't find a bidder to trade this pick. But if Calderia, and the other thing is Josh Jones kept Marcus Calderia scoreless when West Virginia beat Louisville 1-0 in the College Cup. So that's another reason to take Josh Jones over Calderia, because it would require an international spot for Miami. Whereas Josh Jones will not require an international spot. And the more I watch Jones, the more I think he has the traits to be a top 5 pick in this draft. So, I think with his consistency, that's a good pick for Miami if they stay put. But I think they are going to try to move this pick, especially. And I don't think Colorado's going to move up. I think either Montreal's going to try to move up to 3, or they're going to stay put. Or maybe another team that we don't expect steps in and does something. But I went Josh Jones at 3. So how far did Marcus Calderia drop? He was number 4 in my first 2 mocks. Well, he fell to Colorado at 4. So Colorado gets the 2 players I mocked at 1 and 2 in the last 2 mock drafts at 2 and 4. With the LA Galaxy's first round pick. And the LA Galaxy decided to trade this pick away at the MLS trade deadline, even though they had a bottom 5 record. I'll never understand it. So, it's like, I really am interested to see what happens here, because Calderia is only 19. And I think Calderia is going to come in and be a difference maker. He did fatigue after the 65th minute against Clemson. Like, once we got to the 65th, 70th minute, he did fatigue. And it was at the point where Dallin Cuff and Devin Kerr, the 2 announcers on the ACC network who were phenomenal, basically said he looked tired. He looked fatigued. He looks like he's going to have trouble holding his own in the final 20 against Pape Marboy. So maybe that's an indicator as a scout that this is a guy who's effective, but he's only effective for 60 to 65 minutes. Maybe he's not a 90-minute guy, and that's okay. But as long as you know that limitation and recognize it, then you're going to be all right. But it's like, I'm looking at this guy. And he's going to be a top 5 pick. I don't think he goes number 1. But he's 19. He doesn't turn 20 until October. And I think the longevity along with the consistency makes Marcus Calderia. I remember Calderia's first game at Pitt. He came in off the bench against Pitt when Pittsburgh beat West Virginia at home in 2022. And he did so well that he became the starter after that game. And he kept the starting job ever since. And Calderia, we've talked about him for a while, but I don't think he's in the conversation to go number 1. He could still go number 1, but anything besides Kamani Stewart-Baines, Pape Marboy, or Calderia to Toronto at 1 would shock me. But, if Calderia's there at 4, I think you have to pick him if you're Colorado, because now you've got the striker and you've got the really good defender and you've got a goal-scoring striker. You've got those 2 big pieces to accelerate your rebuild. So that's who I would go with here at 4. All right, rounding out the top 5, Joey, we have Marshall's Matthew Bell, forward for Marshall. I know Austin FC has used all 8 of their international slots, but Austin FC still has all 3 under-22 international slots. The 21-year-old Matthew Bell would qualify for an under-22 slot. He's the 5th underclassman to get picked in my mock. Had 10 goals, 4 assists, 24 points as a true freshman, winning Sun Belt Freshman of the Year last year. This year, he had 10 goals, 12 assists, 32 points, winning Sun Belt Player of the Year. He can play the 9 at striker, but he can also play the 7 at right winger, the 11 at left winger with his versatility. Marshall was 11-0 before losing to West Virginia. And Austin FC could be a really fun team to watch down the road if Baudry, Valentin Noel, and Matthew Bell are all on this MLS roster, because you have the winger depth, you have the if Pereira and Noel are the starting midfielders next year, all you have to do is draft the striker, because Austin FC striker had 10 goals in 2022, but that wasn't the case in 2023. You still have Yerudu, one of the league's best attacking midfielders at the 10. You have good winger depth, and you're losing so fine to J-Fall, but if you promote Valentin Noel, he can replace de J-Fall, and you have a really good core offensively. You still got to fix your defense, but your core offensively would be good enough to give this fan base some optimism in Austin, Texas. And for Austin to go from the Western Conference Finals to picking in the top 5, I don't think it's what the franchise wanted. But, I mean, there's rumors Colorado could take Bell at 4. There's rumors Chicago could take Bell at 6. I think Austin's going to swoop in and pick him at 5 if he's here. They need a striker, and it just makes too much sense for them not to pick him here. He's one of the 5 best players in this draft. He's a player we've been talking about. I've been talking about for 2 years on this podcast with you, Joey. So Matthew Bell goes number 5. Any thoughts on this top 5 before I get to the top 10? Because
I think it's a pretty good top 5 overall. We'll see if it stays that way. It's, like I said before, it's chaotic.
it is.
Chaotic situation this year's draft.
And the MLS Super Draft, I would argue, a lot of people say the MLB Draft's the biggest crapshoot. I would argue the MLS Super Draft is the biggest crapshoot. But we're on to Chicago Fire. They have the 6th pick. They've used all 8 international slots. And last year, Chicago traded a first-round pick to Orlando City SC for former Rookie of the Year Chris Muller. That ended up costing the Fire the 6th pick in the draft, which Orlando used to draft Duncan McGuire, who had 13 goals as a rookie. Now Chicago gets there because they have a good attacking midfielder. I've heard rumors about Matthew Bell here. I've heard rumors about Ousmane Sylla here. Ousmane Sylla would count as an international roster slot. I don't think they can pick him. I've heard Giorgio Kovsevsky, the Syracuse senior, could go here, but he's an attacking midfielder, and Chicago already has a good attacking midfielder. So taking him doesn't make any sense for the Fire, unless they just want to stash him for depth. But Jacob Morel, 6'3", 180, 7 goals, 3 assists, 17 points as a freshman. He had 11 goals, 4 assists, 26 points as a sophomore. He's only 19. He can declare for the draft. He's my 6th underclassman under the board. His main position's the 9 at striker, but he can play the 7, the right wing, the 9 at striker, or the 11 at left wing in the MLS, and he just makes a lot of sense for Chicago here. He does not turn 20 until March 29th, 2024, so he'd be 19 for the first month of the MLS season. Next up is DC United. They do have 6 of their 8 international slots locked up. They could take a international player here, but I gave them a domestic player. I gave them Daniel Barker John, striker, Louisville. And this is an interesting player because Daniel Barker John had 9 goals, 3 assists, 21 points during his sophomore season. And, you know, this is a player who I watched him in person against Pittsburgh. He had the assist in overtime that gave Louisville a 1-0 lead. And then he put the dagger on the Pitt Panthers in the ACC tournament game. And I mean, he kicked a goal in the net. But this was not just any goal, Joe. Soccer goal from half court. And those are pretty freaking rare. You do not see those in the pro leagues anymore. You might see those once in a while in college, but it's pretty rare to see a soccer goal from half court in person. Like I think you're more likely to get a half court shot in the NBA. But Damian Barker John, he might have the best leg in this class because he's the only player I've seen that can make that goal from half court. And, you know, that's pretty impressive. It's like, okay, you made a shot from half court in soccer. That's pretty impressive. Okay? And 9 goals, 3 assists, 21 points as a sophomore, was at the 23 college showcase. This United passes on him. New York pick, so probably going to take him at 8. So I went on a little bit of a pick, but I think on the fact that he's younger than Josh Jones, the fact that he dominated the way he did in the ACC tournament against Pitt when I saw him in person, the fact that he's at the MLS College Showcase, and the fact that you can line him up at right wing or striker makes him an intriguing option for a team like DC United at number 7. So that is the 7th player off the board, and we've had 7 underclassmen. First seniors finally coming off the board at number 8. It is Ousmane Sylla, the Clemson midfielder. He had, with Chicago, Montreal, New York City FC all having interest in Sylla, I think Sylla goes here at 8. 13 goals, 10 assists, 36 points. 5 goals for 2 on penalty kicks minutes in 2023. And Sylla's a he can play defensive midfielder at the 6. He can play the 8 at central midfielder, the 10 at attacking midfielder. He is arguably a top 10 prospect following his hat trick against Boston College and his run at the College Cup. He led Clemson to 2 championships in 3 years, which is why I think Sylla is the first senior off the board. But I think you can make a case for Sylla or Oregon State striker Logan Farrington. But the championship pedigree with Sylla is what teams love. And the fact that so many people are talking about Sylla, the fact that 3 teams in the top 10 are looking at him, that tells me he's going to get picked in the top 10, Joey. I had this guy at 15 in my last mock, but he had a hat trick against Boston College in the regular season. He's dominated. And I just think Ousmane Sylla is going to get picked in the top 10. The fact that there's 3 teams in the top 10 rumored to be picking the senior, he's going to get picked. He's going to get picked somewhere in the top 10. I just think New York can promote MD Myers. MD Myers had 17 goals in MLS Next. They can just promote him at striker and reload at midfielder. And I think they will. And I think they'll reload with Ousmane Sylla at number 8. 2 years winning the 21 MLS Cup. So Ousmane Sylla is the first senior off the board at 8. He's the only senior in the top 10 to make this mock draft. So
here's the thing with that, though. If you're picking that early, you want to draft a guy because you're obviously going to be rebuilding. So I think he could possibly go in the top 5 based on what do you want to build your team around. You want to build your team around a winner, a winning coach, somebody who's experienced and done it at a high level. So he could potentially go higher than 7.
I agree. It just depends. And there's already rumors from Tom Bogert of The Athletic that he may get a pro deal somewhere else outside of the United States. Because remember last year, there was a Mo Syracuse striker. Yeah, there was a Syracuse striker in last year's draft. Who went overseas. Yeah, it was not Mo Adams. It was Mo. That's Levante. No, I do not want. I'm just trying to think of the name of the Syracuse player because there was a Syracuse. It was Nathan Apaku. Nathan Apaku. That's it. Nathan Apaku. He turned down the MLS. Probably would have been the number 1 pick as a sophomore, but he got an offer to play for Leeds or Nottingham in the Premier League, so he took that and ran with it. I don't think Sylla's getting an offer that big, but I've heard Tom Bogert of The Athletic, he's one of the best insiders when it comes to MLS soccer. Him and Andrew Wiebe are two of the best insiders. So if they're saying Silla may not enter the MLS draft, he may take the same route as Nathan Apaku, then that's something to take with a grain of salt. And, looking at some of these teams, Colorado could take Pape Marboy and Silla, the two Clemson players at 2 and 4. Because Usman Silla is 22 years old. So if a team wants to bring him up to the MLS right away, they have to take, I think the earliest team that could do that is New York. But there are some other teams that could stash Silla in MLS Next until an international roster slot comes up and make him earn that promotion in the MLS. That's another route that could be explored. But either way, Silla, my top senior in this class. Number 9, Zach Bohane, midfielder, Stanford. I had this guy in Austin FC in my last 2 mocks. He had 8 goals, 11 assists, 27 points, while helping Stanford record 7 shutouts as a sophomore. He is the 8th underclassman in my top 9. He's an attacking midfielder, but he can play the 6 at defensive midfielder, the 7 at right winger, the 8 at central mid, the 10 at attacking mid, or the 11 at left winger. Very versatile at 5'10", 150. Minnesota, they like to get a striker, but Bohane is just too good of a talent to turn down at this point. So you take the best player on your board, and you try to get a striker with that 3rd round pick in an insanely deep striker draft. And rounding out the top 10, my final generation Adidas freshman, Stefan Anor Gayamfi, 10 goals, no assists, 20 points, ACC Freshman of the Year. To be fair, Stefan Anor Gayamfi did not face Clemson and Pape Marboy. So you can argue that, yeah, those goals came from having an easier strength of schedule. That's why he comes in at number 10 on this mock, but he doesn't come in the top 5. But he's one of these guys who could end up moving into the top 5 since he's a generation Adidas. But he's a 20-year-old freshman. There's 19-year-old players in this draft that have more longevity. Maybe not more upside, but they have more longevity. And CF Montreal's a team with 4 international roster slots. So, you can get Stefan Anor Gayamfi at 10 if you just stay put. You don't have to trade up and give up a ton of allocation money in this draft. I think if you stay put, Stefan Anor Gayamfi is probably the best pick for CF Montreal at 10. But that is the top 10, Joey. And in the last mock, we had Forster Ajago, the ACC Player of the Year here. Found out Forster Ajago was not on the official MLS draft list, so he is not eligible to be picked in this draft, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is.
What reason was given?
There was no reason. The rules always state that in order to be eligible for the Super Draft, you have to be on the list. Ajago may have been on last year's list, and if that's the case, he's not eligible for this draft. Because once you're on the list, that's your only opportunity to get drafted. I think they're going to change the rules so you can go back if you're on the list and you don't get drafted, but I don't know. They need to look into that. That's all I'm going to say on that note.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Portland has 2 impact players with left midfielder Evander, who led 9 goals, playing attacking midfielder while lining up at left winger, and their right winger Santiago Moreno, who had 3 goals. And both guys are impact players, but neither's an established star yet. Also, Sebastian Blanco, their midfielder, who had 41 goals, 51 assists, 92 points in 176 games, a free agent. Jefferson Amaya, the 20-year-old from High Point that Florian told me about, is the best player on the board, who has the best chance of replacing Blanco here at 11, 6'1", 170 pounds. He played for Charlotte Independence in the USL, as well as High Point in the NCAA the last 2 years, playing the 8 at central midfielder. He had 5 goals, 4 assists, 14 points, 21 shots, 9 shots on goal, 3 game-winning goals, 1 for 1 on penalty kicks. Played 978 minutes and helped High Point record He helped High Point record 8 shutouts as a true freshman in 2022. Jefferson Amaya had 5 goals, 6 assists, 16 points, 37 shots, 21 shots on goal, 2 game-winning goals, 2 for 2 on penalty kicks, 1,510 minutes, and 7 shutouts as a sophomore after losing first-round goalie Holden Trent, the Union's 2023 first-round pick. This is a player that I think is good enough to get picked here, and probably the best fit for the Timbers at 11. I know they need a striker, but at the same time, you're losing a star midfielder like Blanco, 92 points in 176 games over the last 5 years. That's not going to be easy to replace, whether it's free agency or the draft. So Amaya just fits that team need, fits the bill for what you'd like to see Portland do at 11. And number 12, Roberto Ordonez, Al State Fullerton midfielder. He had 9 goals, 10 assists. Player Top Draw Soccer's midseason rankings from October, which are probably going to be updated. They probably have been either updated today or they're going to be updated today, because I know on Thursday they updated the top 100 for the women's rankings, and then they updated the top 100 freshmen yesterday. So I'm willing to bet Top Draw already updated their rankings today, but I just haven't had the chance to look during the podcast. But Ordonez, junior redshirt, not a bad number 12 pick for Colorado, a midfielder that helps this team out, and definitely a good value pick here for a attacking midfielder. You get Pape Marboy at 2, you get Calderi at 4, and then you get Ordonez at 12. And then you can get your goalie at 21. That's the ideal strategy with 4 first-round picks in this draft. And Ordonez is a player who can help you out. Number 13, San Jose Earthquakes, Matthew Rue, striker, Notre Dame. San Jose ran a 4-2-3-1 in the regular season and a 4-4-2 in the playoffs. You get Matthew Rue, who had 10 goals, 3 assists, 23 points as a junior. You could create a 4-4-2 with Cade Cowell at left winger, Ebo Weiss at striker, Rue your secondary, and Christian Oza at right winger. That would be far tougher to game plan around. And I don't fault San Jose for running a 4-4-2 against some of these teams. But it's like, you don't have that second striker. So if you're going to run that formation, you've got to draft a second striker. That's really my only pet peeve. But hey, if you get Matthew Rue, that will fix some of that. And, by fixing that area, you make this offense a lot harder to stop. And you still have Useni Buddha, the 8th pick in the 2022 MLS draft for depth, who was number 1 on your big board back in 2022, entering his 3rd year. So you have a lot of young pieces, but you've got to take that next step. You got to the playoffs and lost in the wild card round in the play-in game featuring the 9 versus 8 seed. And you lost in that play-in round. But, it's like you should be able to rebound. New York Red Bulls, they take the second senior off the board, Joey. Logan Farrington, striker, Oregon State, played at Wisconsin, Milwaukee, went to Oregon State in the transfer portal, had a really good year at Oregon State. I had him at 13 in my last mock, moved him down a spot. And it's not that Farrington isn't a top 10 talent. You could certainly argue that Logan Farrington, 15 goals, 7 assists, 37 points. The announcers on ESPNU and ACC Network were comparing him to Duncan McGuire in last year's College Cup. And you know what? He scored 2 goals, 2 assists, 6 points against SMU in a 7-1 Sweet 16 win. That SMU team was ranked 6th in the tournament. They were the 6th seed, and they were they were the number 2 team in the country behind Marshall. So to have a statement game like that against SMU and to get Oregon State past North Carolina to Louisville, Kentucky for the College Cup, their first Final Four appearance in school history. It's a good accomplishment for Farrington. I think it's one that makes Farrington a top 15 pick as a senior. And, this is a team that has 5 of their 8 international roster slots occupied. But, you've got a defense that produced 12 shutouts. You've got a midfield. You got a left winger that's got double-digit goals, but you don't have a striker. And you've got some decent central midfielders. So getting that striker here is probably the smartest move for New York Red Bulls at 14. And Logan Farrington makes a lot of sense. And at number 15, wrapping up the top 15, FC Dallas. This and it's a team that has 7 of their top 15 slots filled, but there's talks they're going to get a center back in the draft. And they have Josh Ramsey, the Notre Dame junior center back, in their academy as one of the homegrown players they can sign next year. But they want somebody else to challenge him for minutes. And the rumor is they're going to take a center back at 15. I went with Mads Westergren, the 21-year-old center back from Southern Methodist. Seems like an ideal player for FC Dallas to draft. And, Clark Hunt owns FC Dallas. And with the success Rashee Rice has had with the Chiefs, went to SMU as well, by the way, maybe Clark Hunt's scouting department takes another Southern Methodist Mustang, because SMU is literally the Pony Express now in college soccer. They're no longer that in football. I don't think they'll ever ascend to that height in football, but Mads Westergren held Luis Flores, Oral Roberts, winger that I had a first-round grade on my last mock, to a shutout earlier in the season. And he did well as a sophomore against Stanford in a 3-1 loss to Stanford, with the freshman center back struggling. FC Dallas could also consider Washington center back Nate Jones if they want a domestic center back here rather than an international one. But at this point, I'm thinking Mads Westergren, the 21-year-old, 6'3", 184-pound center back, 1 goal, 4 assists, helped SMU get 9 shutouts. And you have him and Josh Ramsey. That would be a really good center back tandem to have down the road. I know you got the center back from LAFC, but he was 32, 33 when he signed his free agency deal. He's not a long-term piece. You need more bodies at center back if you're going to make a run. You also got to get more midfielders. You've got Jesus Ferreira at striker, and you've got the goaltending, but you need more if you're going to make a deep playoff run. So I got Mads Westergren going to FC Dallas at 15. That is the top 15. Any thoughts on that before we get to the back half of round 1?
Know where I put my phone and all this everything. But I don't have many thoughts on it. It's a class, but I think as you get past the top 10, kind of drops off as far as superstar.
Well, one player who may be a superstar is Akron's Jason Shukaluk. This is a guy who led the country in goals at one point in the season. He had 14 goals, 5 assists, 33 points, a junior redshirt. And he would count as an underclassman. He can play the 9 at striker as well as the 11 at left winger. He's the 14th underclassman to go in the top 16. Nashville, they take the same player I've mocked the last 2 times. Ryan Carmichael, Hofstra, 3rd senior off the board. Nashville only has 4 of their 8 international slots occupied. And they've got Hani Mukhtar. He can play the 9 at striker or the 10 at attacking midfielder. And Mukhtar plays the 10 when Nashville deploys 1 forward, and plays striker when Nashville deploys 2 forwards as that left striker. But you need a second striker to take pressure off of Mukhtar, regardless of whether you deploy a 4-4-2 or you deploy a formation where Mukhtar's the 10 at attacking midfielder. You need that second guy. And, I went with, and Nashville was a team that recorded 13 shutouts compared to the 11 Orlando had, but Orlando had a greater variety of scorers, and I said that would be the difference. Um, Ryan Carmichael's a 4-year starting forward at Hofstra, whose hometown is Ireland. He will require an international slot, but that's something Nashville has. 4 goals, 0 assists, 8 points in 10 starts as a freshman in the spring. Had 15 goals, 9 assists, 39 points in 22 starts in the fall of 2021 as a sophomore. 10 goals, 4 assists, 24 points as a junior in 2022. And then this year, 17 goals, 5 assists, 39 points. Ryan Carmichael plays the 9 at striker. He's also willing to win the kickoff in addition to scoring with his kicking power and kicking accuracy. He plays the right forward role in Hofstra's 4-4-2. Mukhtar plays the left forward role in Nashville's 4-4-2, but they need an upgrade at right forward in the 4-4-2. Ryan Carmichael, not just the best player on the board, but the perfect scheme fit for Nashville here at 17. And yes, he's a senior, but one of the more consistent seniors in the draft, who's dominated at Hofstra the last 3 years. And it's like, yeah, he's there's a reason he's number 14 on Top Draw Soccer's midseason rankings. I mocked him at 17, but that's because I couldn't find a team to pick him. And I think Nashville at 17, this is a good spot for him to go to. And good scheme fit, which is even more important when drafting these guys, Joey. If you can find a player who fits your scheme as far as formations go in soccer, that can really make a difference. And we've talked about scheme fits for football numerous times in this podcast, so you understand the importance of having a good scheme fit player. And that's what Ryan Carmichael is here at 17, even though he's 22 years old and he's a senior. He is a good scheme fit player for Nashville. Perfect scheme fit player. So that's why he's the pick. And I have another senior coming off the board at 18. Giorgio Kosevsky, 5 goals, 4 assists, 14 points, a junior at Syracuse, helping Syracuse win the 2022 College Cup. He had 1 goal, 12 assists, 14 points as an attacking midfielder at the 10. Real Salt Lake is a good core of guys on their back line. I gave them a striker, but at 16 with the first round pick they got from Vancouver. Now I'm giving them somebody who, frankly, is capable of playing midfielder. And I think Jason Shukaluk at 16 is that striker, and the playmaker midfielder Kosevsky at 18. Those guys help your identity. So those are the players I went with. Number 19, Atlanta United FC. I didn't know about this guy until last night, but right wing, Atlanta needs a right winger. The youngest right winger in the draft is Stanford right winger Fletcher Bank. 5'10", 165, had 2 goals, 8 assists, 12 points as a sophomore. Fletcher Bank and his twin brother Palmer Bank are considered the best twins in all of college soccer. Fletcher Bank now the 15th underclassman to get picked. I also got Palmer Bank going late in the first round, so stay tuned to find out where I have Palmer Bank. Speaking of Palmers, though, Palmer Alt, preseason number 1 pick. He was the preseason number 1 pick. I would not shut up about this guy in August, Joey. And this guy had 10 goals, 6 assists, 26 points as a true freshman. Big East freshman of the year. He only had 6 goals, no assists this year, but he is on the official MLS draft list as a true sophomore. He's only 19 years old. He won Mr. Soccer in the state of Indiana as a high school senior after his dad won Mr. Basketball. Honestly, New England is a team that can gamble on Palmer Alt. They have everything back except a striker with Gustavo Boo, 44 goals, 20 assists, 64 points in 100 regular season games, now a UFA. They fired their head coach, Bruce Arena. They got to get a GM, but they do have a sporting director, which could help. But, Palmer Alt is a high-risk, high-reward pick. And if Palmer Alt plays like he did as a freshman, this pick for New England right here at 20 could end up being a massive steal, Joey. And, it's like, how much of a chip of a shoulder? If Palmer Alt a preseason candidate to go number 1 ends up falling to 20. How big of a chip is he going to have on his shoulder if he ends up going to a team like the New England Revolution? That's really the big question here, because it's like, you know, that's the big question here. It's like Palmer Alt is good enough to get picked in the top 20 from an upside standpoint, but at the same time, are any teams going to be alarmed by the fact that he regressed so much after dominating as a freshman? He had a little bit of a down year, only 6 goals, no assists, 12 points as a sophomore. Maybe he was double teamed more. Maybe the pressure of being the number 1 pick got to him, but I wasn't sure if he would end up going back or if he would end up in this draft. He is in the draft, and there's another caveat to the MLS draft this year, Joey. That means basically if you don't want to sign a player to a contract, you can let that player return to college and you retain their rights for 2 more years, Joey. So New England can draft the 19-year-old Palmer Alt, and they don't have to sign him until December 31st, 2025. They have from now until then to sign him, Joey. So New England, if they don't think Palmer Alt's ready for MLS Next, they can draft him here. They can draft the 19-year-old and let him go back to college and develop. While it's an unconventional method, I think this is the point in the draft where we're going to start seeing teams do that at pick 20. With most of the stars off the board, this is the part of the draft where you're going to start to see that principle, that strategy of, okay, we can draft a 19-year-old, but we can let him go to college for a year or 2 and develop before we sign him to an MLS contract. I think by pick 20, we're going to start seeing that with some of these underclassmen, Joey. And Palmer Alt's probably the first example we may see that with. So, but we'll see. I mean, there's other strikers in this draft if New England wants to go a different route, but I figured Palmer Alt would be a good pick here. Colorado, they get the top goalie in my draft, Brian Dowd, a senior goalie at Notre Dame, had 10 shutouts in the fall of 2021, struggled as a junior, 12-3-6 with an .824 save percentage, 70 saves, 11 shutouts with Notre Dame. Also listed as a punter on Notre Dame's football team. Could he be the Brandon Aubrey? Considering the success Aubrey's had as a former Notre Dame center back turned kicker, maybe the lesson here is to stay patient with your Notre Dame prospects in college soccer, because if you don't, they might get paid professionally to play another sport professionally. I mean, just saying. Aubrey's 30 for 30 on field goals this year. Dowd shut out in the round of 32 after Notre Dame lost as the top seed in the ACC tournament, and he takes Notre Dame all the way to the championship before they lost to Clemson. Dowd is one of the 6 seniors to get picked at 21. Sporting Kansas City goes with an academy player at 22, Tucker Lepley. Tucker Lepley showed so much promise as a true freshman, as a freshman redshirt. 5 goals, 7 assists, 17 points at left winger. Gets injured in 2020. Gets injured in 2021. And then gets injured in 2021. No, he's healthy in 2021. He gets injured in 2022, but then he comes back this year, 3 goals, 2 assists, 8 points, dominates the MLS College Showcase despite having 3 goals, 2 assists, 8 points, and 18 starts. It's possible Sporting Kansas City goes in another route, but Tucker Lepley is a guy who could complete the identity of this offense if you take him here at 22, and he's familiar with the academy. He's familiar with the system Sporting Kansas City runs, and that familiarity may get him picked here. All right, number 23, Seattle. They go with Seattle runs a 4-3-2-1 formation. And Seattle goes with Richie Aman, Midfielder, Washington. And Richie Aman, 5'9", 160, 1 goal, 4 assists, 6 points as a sophomore. I mean, he had 1 goal and 1 assist in Washington's road win over the Indiana Hoosiers, who made the Elite Eight. He's 19 years old, turns 20 in March. Somewhat raw, but the upside to develop into a really good attacking midfielder down the road. So you can upgrade the 10 at attacking midfielder if you take Richie Aman. But this is a player that you know, you can. Seattle's had success drafting players out of Washington. They drafted Christian Roldan out of Washington. He was the number 2 player in the draft. He fell to like 15 in 2015, some ridiculous number. And Seattle he was as good as advertised. And Seattle had success with Washington Huskies. So that Richie Aman, the youngest Husky, comes off the board at 23. Inter Miami CF, they used this first-round pick from the Philadelphia Union on Nate Jones. Nate Jones, 6'3", 190, can play the 4 at sweeper, the 5 at center back. Washington had an undefeated season in 2022 in Nate Jones' first year as a starter, where they went undefeated in the regular season before losing. And then this year, Washington only recorded 3 shutouts after recording 9. College Soccer News has this guy going in the top 5, but you got to understand, Nate Jones' 2022 tape was much better than his 2023 tape. That's why I have him at 24, but he could theoretically go a lot earlier than where I'm projecting him. So Nate Jones is a player to keep an eye on leading up to the Super Draft. 4 minutes left on Anchor, 5 picks left. Orlando City SC, Jonathan Robinson. Left back, Western Michigan, 5'8", 155 pounds. He had 2 goals, 5 assists, 9 points, 25 shots. Helped Western Michigan record 11 shutouts, playing the 2 at left back, and played 1,874 minutes and 21 starts as a sophomore redshirt in 2022 after transferring to Western Michigan from Marquette. Marquette hardly played the guy. And then this year he had 1 goal, 13 assists, 15 points, 36 shots, helped Western Michigan record 12 shutouts after losing their starting goalie, Hunter Morse, who became FC Cincinnati's second-round pick, played 1,893 minutes and 22 starts as a junior redshirt. The results and consistency are there with Jonathan Robinson in terms of defending and leading Western Michigan to back-to-back conference championships. The fact that this guy improved without his starting goalie as an underclassman, played 3,761 minutes over the last 2 years. 20th underclassman on my rankings. He's my top left back and my top fullback. Didn't get invited to the MLS College Showcase, but I think he's a first-round talent regardless. If you watch the tape, he really stood out in the 2022 tape against Bowling Green. I mean, he played well in that game. So there's a reason why this guy is in my first round, Joey. Ever since I scouted him, because I was looking for gems in the draft, I was like, wow, this guy is really good. And then I've got Brandon Parrish, the Clemson midfielder who scored the go-ahead goal in the championship against Notre Dame. Houston needs a midfielder, and Bob Skinner described Brandon Parrish as the engine of the Clemson offense. And they get the engine for their midfield. Houston needs a midfielder, so it's like, you know, he does possess the stamina engine to play the 6 at defensive midfielder. He can also play the 8 at central midfielder, but I think he's a better fit as a box-to-box midfielder. Also the team captain of the Clemson soccer team, paired with Ethan Bartlow at center back and Thor Ulferson at striker. Number 27, Timothy Arias. Timothy Arias, a 19-year-old jack-of-all-trades player on the right side of the pitch from Costa Rica. Can play the 3 at right back, the 6 at defensive midfielder, the 7 at right winger, and the 8 at central midfielder. Only started 3 games as a freshman while playing in 9. But Timothy Arias had 0 goals, 1 assist, 1 point, helped Central Florida produce 3 shutouts. And Arias started 11 games this year where he played 90 or more minutes. So stamina's not a question. And really the only reason I'm considering this guy this late in the first round is because the stamina is so incredible. It's like 11 games where he's played 90 or more minutes. Okay. The goals and assists need to jump up. You'd like to see more shutouts, but the stamina's there. The stamina you want from an MLS player, a 19-year-old MLS player, is there. So, this guy might end up going higher than where I'm projecting him. On a domestic right back like Kevin Bonilla could also be an option, but I went with Arias here. And then I went with Morris Dugan, the Marshall center back at 28. LAFC lost a center back to FC Dallas after winning the 2022 MLS Cup. And after losing the 2023 MLS Cup to Columbus, their other center back retired. So not only does LAFC need one center back, they may need two. Morris Dugan, the backbone of the Marshall Thundering Herd defense, Sunbelt Defensive Player of the Year, helped Marshall record 10 shutouts starting in 9 games. And then Palmer Bank, the twin of Fletcher Bank, left back, freshman redshirt on Stanford. That is my first round. Joey will have his thoughts back for hour 2 on Anchor. So that is the first round. I was trying to hurry that, just try to get that first hour in on Anchor, but I mean, we did a lot of research. We went through the entire 391-man list. MLS Soccer only lists 388 players, but they did not list the 3-generation Adidas players. That is information that the mainstream media doesn't have that I have, thanks to my insiders. So, looking at this draft, there were good players. And for anybody wondering, okay, are there players good enough to get picked in round 2, round 1 that are seniors that fell in the draft? And the answer is yes, there are seniors good enough to get picked in round 2. Okay? There are. And I have the first half of round 2 done. I don't have all of it done. I'll mention some of the players that fell to round 2 that were first round picks, but I'm not going to go super in depth with this like I did with the first round. And I'll do that when we record the next part of this on Anchor, Joey. But looking at this draft, the Columbus Crew are the first team since the LA Galaxy in 2011 to return all 11 starters after winning the MLS Cup. They are not the favorite to win the MLS Cup, surprisingly. Inter Miami CF with Lionel Messi, with Luis Suarez, the two biggest stars for the biggest stars, two of the biggest stars in the world, who were on FC Barcelona at one point when the team was at the peak. They're the Vegas favorite to win the MLS Cup. Is that disrespect to Columbus? And should the Crew be the favorite if they're the first MLS team since the LA Galaxy in 2011, a team that repeated in 2012, to return all 11 starters after winning the MLS Cup? Should that make Columbus the odds-on favorite, in your opinion? Really quickly before we get to some of the round 2 picks on Anchor, and then we'll get to our NFL picks for this week. Because
I don't know. You're looking. I don't think there's a guaranteed winner this early, but they have to be the favorite. Just because, remember, guys, this just happened. Okay, so who was automatically the favorite to win immediately after? I don't care what sport you're in. We can all have a differing opinion about who the favorite is, but I've said, I know Chris said the champion, that's not our favorite to win next year, but let's look at reality. It's just like the old adage, you are what your record is. Well, guess what? You're the champion until you're not. So they have, this early on, they have to be the favorite. You might say somebody else is the favorite because of this reason or that reason. But in reality, we all know this. If you're the champion, you're the favorite until somebody proves otherwise. That's just the way it is.
yes, and I do want to take a look at the odds really quickly. Inter Miami CF, I know they have Lionel Messi, the biggest star in the world. I mean, he led Argentina to the FIFA World Cup. I know he's really good. but he did miss some games with injuries. He did miss some games traveling with Argentina. So it's like, we're really going to make them the favorite to win the 2024 MLS Cup this early. And I think it's too early to have these odds. I'm with you, Joey. I just found it very curious that Inter Miami CF is the favorite this early. Yeah, Inter Miami CF plus 200. LAFC plus 800. LAFC was plus 500, but I've said that
After the championship game, the champion is always the favorite to win a game.
well, the Columbus Crew will return all 11 starters. LAFC is losing 2 to 5 starters, minimum 2, maximum of 5 of their 11 starters. And they have higher odds than Columbus, which I think is nonsense. I do not think LAFC is going to win the Western Conference for a third year in a row. They returned 10 of their 11 starters, and the only reason they won the conference this year is because St. Louis got knocked out by 8-seed Sporting Kansas City. So once they beat Seattle, they got that home game. Then they went on the road to Columbus. FC Cincinnati returns 9 of their 11 starters, but they are trying to re-sign the other 2 starters that are free agents. They're at plus 1,200 along with the Crew. I would probably put the Union have 10 returning starters. Their only departures, their left back, but they did sign a 21-year-old left back in MLS Next. They also have the Union also own the academy rights to Pittsburgh Panthers left back Jackson Gilman. They own the homegrown rights to Gilman. So it's like, even if Kai Wagner leaves, they're still going to be deep at left back. So I get that the Union are at 1,400. The Sounders are at plus 1,600. They are losing a few players to free agency. Atlanta United is at plus 2,000. I don't agree with that, especially if they lose Miles Robinson. The Dynamo are at plus 2,500. The Galaxy are at plus 2,500, despite getting rid of their best player, Javier Chicharito Hernandez, and trading the 4th pick in the MLS draft away. I don't think they should be at plus 2,500, 4th best odds. New York Red Bulls plus 2,500. St. Louis City SC, Vancouver. St. Louis City SC and the Vancouver Whitecaps both have all 11 starters returning. Both of those teams are at plus 3,300 to win the MLS Cup. If I'm looking for a long money play, that's what I'm betting on one of those teams, because and the New England Revolution at plus 3,300 is a good bet too, Joey, because they have 10 of their 11 starters back. They just need a striker. And Orlando City SC has all 11 starters back. They're at plus 3,300. So, I mean, you were looking at 5 or 6 teams in the Eastern Conference that have 9 of their 11 starters back. That is unheard of, Joey. It's like the Eastern Conference in the MLS is kind of becoming like the AFC in the NFL, Joey, with all that action, with those 6 teams pushing each other for 9 playoff spots. And those 6 are probably going to be in regardless of the records. You just don't know what order they're going to be in. But it's like the East is a tougher conference right now, in my opinion, because Philadelphia and Orlando, even though they lost in overtime. They took the game into overtime 0-0 in the 100th minute, where it could have honestly gone either way. The Western Conference, everybody except Vancouver and St. Louis is losing players to free agency. Now, if LAFC and Seattle and some of these teams reload, fine. I don't have problems with them being the favorites. But right now, I think it's too early to make anybody in the West, to give anybody in the Western Conference better odds than plus 1,000, Joey. It's too early, especially if LAFC loses 5 of their 11 starters. They're not plus 800 if they lose that many starters. Someone else will win the conference. And anybody who bets on LAFC will probably lose their life savings. But that's what I said the last 2 years, and I turned out to be wrong on that. So I guess they've earned the right to be the favorite to win the West for now. But Columbus should be favored over Miami. That's all I'm going to say on that. All right.
I look at it like this. If I was a betting man in the preseason of the NFL, I would have taken Cleveland to at least make the NFC Championship. Guess what? Right now, they're barely able to field a team. Okay? So by the time this MLS season gets there, you can say all you want about the odds right now. Everything you want about the odds. That's fine. You say whatever you want, Vegas. Say it. But all you have to do, hey, look at the Bills, look at the Browns, look at all these teams that you could have made a lot of money on in the preseason by going to the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl, and look at them now and say, yeah, that was a bad bet. Okay? Look at the Chargers. That's a bad bet. So let's just pump the brakes on these early betting. Because, hey, we got injuries, we got free agency, we got the draft, we got all these things that could happen by even before week 1 of the season. So pump your brakes. Don't make any bets now. Don't lose your ass. Pump your brakes. Take a deep breath. And you'll be all right. Just let it play out. Because we don't need anything like what would have happened in the NFL this year, especially the AFC, taking your money in soccer too. So just pump the brakes, let it play out. Sound like sound advice?
Yes.
Sound like sound advice to you, Chris?
Yes.
Good? Okay, it's cool. It's going to be all right. Just don't throw away your life savings, as Chris said, on something right now. Because throwing your life savings on it, it's going to be a bad day. Might as well, instead of doing that, do a few small parlay bets. You'll get $1,000 for, betting $25 on a few parlays. I mean, do that instead. Don't bet on a team. A lot less risk, a lot higher reward.
Yep.
Good thing. Yeah, there's some gambling advice for you.
Very sound, very wise, very sage gambling advice. I just finished typing the 16th pick in round 2. And yeah, on that note, I am going to talk about round 2 on Anchor, but only until 11:30. I'm not going to go through the entirety of round 2. I will stop at 11:30 and we'll pivot to NFL predictions.
And guys, do not bet on the 16th pick in round 2. That's probably a bad idea at this point.
Yep. Number 30, kicking off round 2. This is the first draft prospect to be named after a fictional TV character. North Carolina center back, Toronto FC selects North Carolina center back Charlie Harper. Yeah, I was like, really? We have a draft prospect named Charlie Harper? And when I saw that, I immediately thought of the character played by Charlie Sheen, because if you Google Charlie Harper, the character played by Charlie Sheen, not the center back from North Carolina, is the first thing that comes up. But yes, it gets even crazier. Charlie Harper, the center back of North Carolina, he's the son of Alan Harper. That's the name of the brother on the show, 2.5 Men. The story gets even crazier. Versatile enough to play the 4 at sweeper, the 5 at center back, left-footed center back. Charlie Harper's only 19 or 20 as a 2022 high school graduate, born on June 6th. Toronto can stash him in MLS Next or use one of their 3 under-22 international slots to select the Japan native. And you can also develop him at North Carolina as a sophomore redshirt in 2024 and a junior redshirt in 2025, since he is a freshman redshirt. You do not have to bring him up to the MLS right away if you think he's raw. And, this is a player that he ended up helping North Carolina get like 8 shutouts. So, it's like, pretty good player to get early in round 2. I mean, it's like, this is a player that so yes, Charlie Harper kicks off round 2, and no, it's not related to the 2.5 Men character. Next up, the Rapids. Ernest Mensah Jr. Fullback Xavier. Ernest Mensah Jr. is 5'10", 177, has the versatility to play the 2 at left back, 3 at right back, 4 at sweeper, 5 at center back. Also a domestic-born player. He spent the last 2 seasons playing the 3 at right back, 0 goals, 2 assists, 2 points. Helped Xavier get 7 shutouts, 1,109 minutes as a freshman. 0 goals, 1 assist, 1 point. Helped Xavier record 8 shutouts. Very physical defender. Great at sweeping, great at getting tackles, great at intercepting the ball and high pointing the ball. He was 5'10", 163 pounds in high school. And Ernest Mensah Jr. added 14 pounds of muscle since graduating from high school. So, you know, he's fast, he's athletic, and he's added 14 pounds of muscle since high school. That's good size for an outside back at left back or right back at one of your fullback spots. Not necessarily the size you want for a center back, but that's good size for an outside back. And Colorado's a team that needs to draft a starting left back. They also could use more depth at right back. So it's like, you know, Ernest Mensah Jr., low risk, high reward pick here in round 2. And if he doesn't develop, you can just keep him in college. He's the 25th underclassman in my top 31. So, you know, it's like, next up, we have a senior coming off the board here. Inter Miami CF, they draft a senior to develop and stash in MLS Next. Alec Hughes, striker, Massachusetts. This is a player who had 10 goals, 2 assists, 22 points. He was the Co-Atlantic 10 Player of the Year for Massachusetts as a junior in 2022. Came back, had 15 goals, 1 assist, 31 points, took 73 shots. 37 of those 73 shots were shots on goal as a senior. He was the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year as a senior for a second year in a row. He's a natural 9 at striker. He can come up to MLS Next, develop for a year. Then he can be a backup to Luis Suarez. In 2025 before potentially starting in 2026. So Alec Hughes, a very consistent player for UMass these last 2 years in the Atlantic 10, ends up going to Inter Miami at 32. And Alec Hughes is a player that I had a first-round grade on, but because of the overwhelming amount of underclassmen in this draft, he falls to round 2. He's a good player. It's like, he's not a top 15 player, but, you know, in any other MLS draft, he's a guy who would go in the back half of round 1 and 16 through 29. He still ends up getting picked at 32, which is a good spot for him, you know? So, I mean, you can't really complain about that pick. Now, my LA Galaxy, what are we going to do? I've got the LA Galaxy getting a underclass as junior redshirt. Tyrese Spicer, striker, Lipscomb. Tyrese Spicer finally put it together. 14 goals, 3 assists, 31 points. Plays the 9 at striker. He did manage to score on Indiana in the round of 48 at the College Cup. Indiana usually reloads in the back line. Spicer has the kicking power and kicking accuracy you want from a 22-year-old striker. What's more impressive is his speed. This is a guy who can run a mile in 5 minutes and 40 seconds. He can run 2 miles in 11 minutes and 35 seconds. That is how fast Tyrese Spicer is. He got an invite to the MLS College Showcase, but he declined the invite to recover from an injury. Even with the medical concerns surrounding Spicer, you have to look past that, because if you can run 2 miles in under 15 minutes, you are fast. And it's like, Joey, how fast is that? Is that faster than you? You've ran miles around Jacksonville. This guy can run 2 miles in 11 minutes and 35 seconds. How?
The simple answer is yes, it's fast. My top speed that I ever ran was, we had a 5K. It was up a bunch of hills. It was over on a college campus, and I was 162 pounds at the time, and I ran it in 23 minutes, 5K, 3.16 miles. I was averaging about 6 minutes a mile, so he would have been averaging, what did you say it was, 2 miles or 60 minutes?
He ran 2 miles in 11 minutes and 35 seconds. He ran
11 minutes. So
yeah.
He would have been averaging about 5 minutes, a 5-minute mile, which is incredible. The highest I ever got to for a mile was like 6 minutes, 17 seconds.
Because I had this guy at 14 in my last mock, and the only reason I moved him down to the second round is we don't know how the medicals are, because there's a report that he declined an invite to the MLS College Showcase. So that's the only reason I have this guy in the second round. I think he's a first-round talent. The kicking power, the kicking accuracy on tape shows that. And if he's that fast, he can run a mile in 5 minutes, 40 seconds. He's that fast. It's like, the Galaxy have 2 international slots. They have nothing to lose by taking Spicer after getting rid of their striker, Chicho Hernandez. And Spicer's a good player for them to build their team around. I mean, it's a guy I had at 14 in the last mock.
Put that in perspective. The guy who won that 5K did it in 17 minutes, and he's a 60-year-old doctor.
It's impressive.
Okay. He would have been in that 5K maybe third. Second or third.
Yeah.
That doctor won it by about 2 minutes over everybody else. So he would have been second or third out of 230-something people.
Yep. Dylan Kropp ends up going to Austin FC at 34. He can play the 4 or the 5 at sweeper or center back. 27th underclassman. He shows flashes of first-round ability. He's improved each season, but he hasn't dominated in his 2 seasons. And had 1 assist, helped Xavier get 8 shutouts. 3 assists, helped Xavier get 9 shutouts. Domestic Morin player will not require international slot, but this 19, 20-year-old sophomore is a developmental player. Austin FC can either bring him to MLS Next or they can keep him in college. And honestly, I'd probably keep him in college for a year, bring him to MLS Next in 2025, and then if he's still on the team by then, you can give him a shot in 2026 if you have the patience to see it through, because this guy's only 19 or 20 years old. And if you develop him until he's 22 or 23, you develop him in college for another year, then you develop him in MLS Next for a year, he'll be 22 or 23. You can bring him up to the pros at that point, but you got to be patient and stay the course if you don't think he's MLS ready now, because, I mean, these are impressive numbers. 8 shutouts as a freshman, 9 as a sophomore after the goalie leaves. Won't require international slot. I think he's worth gambling on at this point in round 2, but remember, the new rules, you can keep a player in college or you can sign them. Ruben Masales, the left winger at Duke, versatile enough to play left back, right back, defensive midfielder, right winger, and left winger. Can play 5 different positions. Former midfielder for IMG Academy, a powerhouse high school. Had 4 goals, 4 assists, 6 shutouts, played 1,340 minutes. Also went to the MLS College Showcase. And you can let him play his senior year at Duke and then sign him in 2024 from a flexibility standpoint. DC United gets Elliot Goldthorpe, the midfielder from Hofstra, who had 17 goals, 6 assists, 40 points. This year he had 8 goals, 15 assists, 31 points. He started 21 out of 22 games. Hofstra made the Sweet 16, Goldthorpe took 74 shots in 2022, 67 shots in 2023. He's also got 62 career shots on goal and 11 game-winning goals. A junior underclassman who can play the 8 at central midfielder or the 10 at attacking midfielder, but he's an underclassman from the United Kingdom and Leeds. And Elliot Goldthorpe, the Hofstra midfielder, is a nice pick for DC United here at this spot. But, you know, this MLS draft is 87 picks, and believe me, I do not have all 87 picks up. Real Salt Lake is a third pick at 37. Their left back's 33. I went with Kevin Bonilla, the 22-year-old fullback from the Portland Pilots. He was good against Pittsburgh. I mean, he helped Portland get 10 shutouts before losing to Pitt in the quarterfinals of the 2022 College Cup as a sophomore redshirt. This year, he moved from left back to right back, 1 goal, 10 assists, 12 points, 8 shutouts as a junior redshirt. Versatility to play both fullback spots, and FC Dallas has decided they're not going to sign him to a homegrown deal. So he is eligible for the MLS draft. And, you know, 5'8", 158, not ideal size, but too talented to fall out of the top 40. Junior redshirt. 38, Kalani Kasarienzi. Yeah.
Now, here's the thought process for you. If the NFL had homegrown deals, how darn good would the Bengals and Browns have been over the year?
Yeah, because Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce are both from New Heights, Ohio. So they'd be Browns homegrowns, both of them. I believe both of them would be homegrowns if we applied that rule to the NFL. Patrick Mahomes would be a Dallas Cowboy under the homegrown rules.
Yeah, and interesting thing, Athens is closer to Cincinnati, so Joe Burrow would still be a base either way.
Yes. Josh Allen would be a 49er under this homegrown rule. It's crazy. Brock Purdy would be a Cardinal under this. Yeah, that's probably not a good thing to joke about with the Cardinals and Niners playing tomorrow, but yes. I have I have Charlotte FC taking Kalani Kasarienzi, a defensive midfielder from Washington who can play the 6 at defensive midfielder, the 8 at central, or the 3 at right back. 4-year starter, but a junior redshirt for the Washington Huskies. College Soccer News has him listed in their top 4, but he ended up falling the second round. Washington's one of those teams that dominated in 2021 and in 2022, but they just hit a cliff and took a step back in 2023. I think Kalani Kasarienzi, with the 38th pick, Charlotte FC traded away one of their veterans to get the 38th pick in the MLS draft. So they now own this pick from Nashville, which is Minnesota's second-round pick. So I went Kalani Kasarienzi. Montreal gets Trace Alfin, a 21-year-old goalie from Wake Forest. I've said it for 3 years. That Montreal needs goalie depth. I've mocked a goalie to Montreal for like the 3rd year in a row. His learning curve is similar to Patrick Schultz, but he's not as advanced as Schultz was coming out of St. Louis. 32nd underclassman. Jaden Hibbert, goalie, Connecticut. He's a 19-year-old goalie on the Connecticut Huskies. He doubled his shutout total from 2 to 4, but, you know, still a project. 172 goals against average as a freshman, now 127. Improved his saves from 15 to 17. Went 4-2 as a starter in 2022 and 6 starts, 7-6 in 2023. I love the intensity Jaden Hibbert plays with on film. He will do whatever it takes to protect the soccer ball, even if it means tackling a defender like a linebacker and knocking that defender on their rear end. The 19-year-old goalie has the ceiling to develop into Connecticut's best goalie since Andre Blake if he can channel that level of play, but that's the big if. Can he channel that intensity? The problem is he's so domineering. He got a red card in Connecticut's regular season finale, which cost him a chance to start in the Big East tournament. Jaden Hibbert's rawer than Alpin. He's rawer than Brian Dowd. But if he can put everything together and if you can fix him over a 2-year period, he could develop into a better goalie than both Dowd and Alpin. Portland wouldn't have to sign Hibbert until December 31st, 2025, under the new MLS draft rules, they can develop him. They can take a luxury pick on Jaden Hibbert with no domestic strikers on the board. They can take a flyer on Hibbert here, and maybe it works out. 41, one of my favorite seniors in the draft, Patty Burns, left back, Notre Dame, 22-year-old left back, had 5 goals, 10 points in 2022. This year, 3 goals, 1 assist, 7 points, helped Notre Dame record 10 shutouts. And Patty Burns, he has a relentless motor. And the other thing I like about Patty Burns is, you know, he's not afraid to call out teammates and challenge them to get better. He even if it means cussing at them when they miss assignments by giving the younger guys, less experienced defenders tough love. Any other MLS Super Draft, Patty Burns is a first-round player. And the more I talk about Patty Burns, the more I'm pissing Joey off by not putting him in my top 40. Because it's a guy with great leadership traits. Senior left back, helped Notre Dame get 10 shutouts in 2023. Did the same thing in 2021 as well. Very consistent player. But it's like he turns 23 in January. And in any other MLS draft, he's a first-rounder. But in this draft, with all these underclassmen, he falls outside of the top 40. And he's a good player. If you're looking for a veteran that can fire up your team in the Super Draft, Patty Burns is one of the best finds you'll get. Andrew Johnson, the Cornell sophomore, is the player I mocked to San Jose at 42. 43 New York Red Bulls. I went with an attacking midfielder. Ask Ekelund, attacking midfielder for the Duquesne Dukes. 8 goals, 1 assist, 17 points as a freshman at Duquesne. Actually scored on the Pitt Panthers defense as a true freshman when Duquesne played Pitt, getting by Jackson Walty during his senior year. Ask Ekelund had 12 goals, 3 assists, 27 points. He was the Atlantic 10. He was the Atlantic 10 midfielder of the year. Yes, so, I mean, and, you know, he had a hat trick against Virginia Tech. If you're an Atlantic 10 team like Duquesne, and you're scoring a hat trick against an ACC team, that's going to get my attention. Worst case scenario, Ekelund remains at Duquesne, or he plays in MLS Next for 2 years and doesn't sign with the Red Bulls until 2025, because best case scenario, he ends up on the Red Bulls at some point this year, since they need an immediate upgrade at attacking midfielder. And he doesn't turn 21 until April, and he grew up playing soccer in Norway. So ask Ekelund, one of these late risers, 6'3", 180, pretty big attacking midfielder. FC Dallas went with Vincent Benage of Davidson. He can play the 7 at right wing, the 8 at central mid, the 9 at striker, 10 at attacking midfielder, 11 at left winger. Jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife on offense. 7 goals, 0 assists, 14 points as a freshman. This year he had 7 goals, 5 assists, 19 points. Mainly an offensive forward, but he can steal the ball from opposing defenders to create scoring chances by passing or shooting the soccer ball. 36th underclassman. And the final player to crack my top 45. This is all you're getting on Draft Utopia, folks, because we got to get to NFL predictions before 1. Jacob Abali, forward Portland. Portland has all 11 starters coming back. They brought back Blackman despite trading their first-round pick away, so they can go with the best player on their board. And maybe Jacob Abali, who took a photo with Vancouver Whitecaps co-owner Steve Nash, will be the pick here. But he's a good player. 12 goals, 4 assists, 28 points as a junior redshirt. So that is the last pick I updated. And I've got to go through this after the podcast. You can go to draftutopia.com/2024 MLS Mock Draft.html to read the whole thing. But 87 total picks. I've got 45 of them typed for Tuesday. So I'm going to end that segment on Anchor, and then we will get into our NFL predictions for this week. Everybody except for the Frog picked the Raiders to win. Kerm picked the Chargers. He had a what should I say? He had a Brandon Staley moment, I guess. I'm trying to say the right thing without being too hard on him. But Kerm is still 100 times more competent than Brandon Staley. So in Kerm's defense, he is still 100 times more competent than Brandon Staley. Even though he got...
Brandon Staley did get fired, so yeah. Here's the thing. Brandon Staley deserved to get fired on that because the Raiders are horrible. And I have no fucking idea how the heck he allowed that. Because the Raiders are not a good team. They are not. So I'm not sure what happened. Because maybe it's just a thing of that's actually how important having a franchise quarterback is to an NFL team. Yeah, quarterback went down, and that was it. The entire season's over. Because remember, we were still talking about the Chargers having an outside chance at getting into the wild card.
Once Herbert got injured against the Broncos, I pivoted to the Raiders for this week. And that's what a majority of our staff did as well. Everybody was just like, yeah, we're out on the Chargers.
Yeah, because, who even is the backup quarterback? Oh. And, it's not a good situation for the Chargers, but at least the Chargers fans that have been calling for Brandon Staley's head over the last few years, well, they finally got what they wanted. He is gone. I haven't heard one Chargers fan say they didn't care if they made the playoffs because their season is already a success because Brandon Staley is no longer there. That should tell you how Chargers fans feel about Brandon.
They also fired longtime general manager Tom Telesco.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of a thing, when you have, because a loss like that really says to how little you have done, especially in the draft, to upgrade your team. The only reason the Broncos got the pass on going up 70 was because these are already new guys. They just brought them in. Otherwise, you can guarantee Sean Payton and their general manager, they'd be gone too. But because it was their first year, they got that. And now it's